Welcome back to the Jazari Qual Show. Jazari and Tommy here with some not late news, but some of the latest news or developments that have been taking place as we have been watching Democratic leadership and how things have been changing, as well as the uh, cabinet nominees and what is following them. So, Tommy, we should start with the DNC.
Yeah, thanks for having the show. I thought we were gonna do one like tomorrow, and then I was just like, hey, got some exciting chatter today, so why don't we get out in front of it?
Right.
So yeah, the race for DNC chair is starting to really heat up, even though there's only actually I just saw this today. There's only one announced candidate, a guy named Martin O'Malley. He's a former Maryland governor. But sometime this week, we should be seeing our first progressive challenger announcing their candidacy for DNC chair. I don't know if it's going to, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen no later than Thursday.
Mhm.
But it could happen tomorrow or Wednesday as well. But yeah, I was just kind of excited to talk about that and kind of just tell people, why they should be looking at the DNC chair race and what to watch for. So.
Because a huge part of it too, following the election, is everybody has been talking about like what's next for the Democrats and do they want to change their
Hmm.
messaging and what does that look like and what does
Hmm.
leadership look like moving forward? Because a lot of people are not happy with the election results, obviously, and so a lot of people feel like there needs to be some change happening there. So one of the contenders is Ken Martin.
Yep, Ken Martin is reportedly going to be announcing his candidacy sometime in the next few days. And like I said, Martin O'Malley just announced today his candidacy.
Mhm.
And we can talk about what that might mean and why I'm kind of big on Ken Martin. Um,
Talk about
but yeah.
Martin O'Malley first.
So Martin O'Malley is the former governor of Maryland, as I understand it. Let me just look up one thing.
Mhm.
I think he ran. He was one of the Democrats who wasn't Hillary or Bernie in 2016, who all really had no hope when it came to like getting the nomination. I remember the only thing I really remember about him was he kind of seemed a little goofy, but like in a good way. He was in the Iowa caucuses and he was like trying to get people to even know who he was because everybody was just talking about Clinton and Sanders at the time. And
Yeah.
I remember he seemed like a really wholesome guy. I'll give you that, even though he's not my preference because he was like in a room with a single caucus goer, and they talked one on one for a decent amount of time, and then he was like, "We got one." He convinced one person to like support him,
Mm.
um, an Iowa's caucus goer. While you've got Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton with these just large crowds of people yelling at him and screaming for him and stuff like that. So I thought it was kind of funny that there's this other guy that nobody really knows about, but he was like, "Hey, I talked to one person," and it's like, well, that does kind of warm my grassroots heart, sort of thing. But yeah, he's not. So he would be very much of kind of what's the word for it? An establishment figure type. You know what I'm saying? He would be kind of
Mhm.
the centrist sort of thing. He wouldn't be like the progressive answer to the recent losses, that sort of thing. I mean,
Yeah.
there's other things. There's other things that I didn't like about it. When he was the mayor of Baltimore, he took one of those like tough on crime policy stances, which is one of the laziest stances to take. Um,
Really quick
it
to
led
jump
to
in, not to cut you
go
off.
ahead.
Let me just give you guys, like, for those watching who don't know who Martin O'Malley is, just like a brief rundown of his legislative history. So he was on the Baltimore City Council from 1991 to 1999. That's where he began his political journey. Then he became the mayor of Baltimore from 1999 to 2007. And then from 2007 to 2015, he served as the governor. And then he ran for president the following year. So he was like heavily involved in politics, like for the last like almost 30 years.
Hmm.
And from then, he worked as the commissioner of the Social Security Administration from 2023 to 2024. He was nominated by President Biden to serve as that role. And then in 2025, where for 2025, he's announcing his candidacy. So he just announced today, you said, for the DNC chair?
Hmm. Yeah, I'm seeing on NBC News this dropped noon Central Time this morning.
Mhm.
But yeah, he's announced. I mean, but there was already chatter in the mainstream media even about how he was already talking to big party donors about candidacy. So that's the first time I saw it, and I was kind of on our last episode. I was like, "Oh, Martin O'Malley is DNC chair." So
Mhm.
yeah, he's made it official. This is his first. I mean, he announced this morning or this afternoon, early this afternoon. So he's the only one who's announced. But I think Ken Martin is about to announce sometime this week. I'm sure it's going to be within the next day or two.
Yeah, and like Tommy said, this is very much your regular establishment
Hmm.
Democrat, probably, I mean, just kinda guessing, would wanna
Centrist, yeah,
centrist, maybe more right, like, moving farther to the right, because you guys
yeah.
have seen kind of the rhetoric surrounding the takes on why Harris lost the election, things like the
Hmm.
party didn't go far enough to the right and things like that, and so
Hmm.
he's very much that kind of Democrat that would keep with that message, if not
Yeah.
moving further to the right.
No, he would move us further to the right on like border, and then people are like deriding how we made wokeism like a central part of the pitch, even though that was just not true.
Mm.
Um, so.
And to piggyback off that really quick, I've had this conversation with multiple people about, how people perceived Harris's campaign and said she was
Hmm.
campaigning on this and that when she actually wasn't. There was just kind of just this dominant rhetoric that overtook social media on things that
Hmm.
were Harris's key issues that in fact were not. She didn't really talk about, trans youth or trans healthcare, things like that. But
Hmm.
that became a huge talking point on what she was campaigning on, even though it wasn't a part of her platform or her key
Yeah.
issues. Um, just stuff like that, you know.
Hmm.
Lost my train of thought there, but let's talk about Ken Martin.
So yeah, do you want me to just kind of just share a picture of the guy? So
Yeah, I also have some stats on him too.
okay, I'll just share real quick, and I'll just kind of show everybody the picture at least. Oh, what am I doing here? Okay, so this is him. He's currently the chair of the Minnesota Democratic Party. They call it the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party. But
Mhm.
he's also the chair of he's the president of the Association of Democratic State Committees, which basically he's like the chair of state party chairs, sort of thing. So I mean, and then he's also finally he's one of the vice chairs of the Democratic National Committee. I think there's like 8 of those or something like that. But yeah, this is him. He seems to be like the progressive firebrand right now. So that's who you might be seeing more of in the very near future if the chatter does turn out. So
Yeah,
just him.
so like Tommy said, he was a chairman of the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party since
Hmm.
2011. He
Hmm.
actually began his political career in the 1990 as an intern for U.S. Senator Paul Wellstone's campaign, and then
Hmm.
since then he's been doing like a variety of different things. I think what was really important, or some of his key achievements, so he was elected as a chairman of the Minnesota DFL party in 2011, as I said. And when he became chair, that party was facing significant debt and a lot of electoral defeats. And then under his leadership, he was able to have a lot of notable successes, like winning every statewide election since his tenure began, and then also helping secure two trifectas. I believe one of which was for Tim. Did something happen?
So I mean, I just started looking up to see like chatter on other people that I saw, and Newsweek is like, oh, Martin Malley is announced. So the other rumor that I heard about, and it's pretty much already in the mainstream as far as official rumors go, is
Mhm.
Rahm Emanuel. So I'm looking at Newsweek. Do you just want me to share this? Because something made me just draw drop. And then,
Sure. I was just gonna. The last closing thing I was gonna say is I think the latest of which was under Governor Walz and was able to pass a lot of like progressive legislation, like the school meals for
mhm.
kids in Minnesota and things like that. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
and they haven't lost a statewide race since he's been chair. I mean, I think they haven't lost one since like 2007 or something.
Yeah, that's what I said.
2010. Okay, no, sorry. I was just distracted by this thing, but anyways, yeah.
No, you're good.
Um, so if you can see this right now, it's Newsweek is basically saying like, well, okay, the race is heating up after Martin O'Malley announces, and then I was just looking for what other speculation there was, and then so Rahm Emanuel was the one I heard about, and I was just like, okay, kind of, sort of Obama Democrat, which Obama today versus Obama 2008, kind of a different thing. So I
Mhm.
would not be excited for a Rahm Emanuel like DNC chairship. And it looks like, yeah, even AOC is like, this ain't it. Disease in Washington and with Democrats spend more time listening to donors than working class. So then I was just scrolling down to see what other short list speculation there is, and then who. So do you see that? Like, apparently,
Wow.
she's on the gossip short list, which I just do not see this happening. And
Tell us
not
why.
well, it's because that, like, first of all, we're a really small red state,
Mhm.
and you're always gonna like when you have to go to the DNC, and now I'm kind of just speaking with a little bit of with with a little bit of boldness, I guess I could say. Um, when you're from a small state at the DNC, you're not given the opportunity a lot to be like the leader on direction of the party and stuff like that. And I think that, like, as a small stater, you gotta have play in the back seat, but also like, um, and I'm a little hesitant here because there was some criticism about her in the paper recently, here in the Journal Star.
Yeah.
Uh, I so the criticism she got was the wrong criticism. It was opportunistic. It didn't really have anything to do with her, but I don't see that actually developing because it's just I just don't see a small red state uh, where our successes as Democrats is kind of questionable and definitely open to criticism and stuff like that. I don't see the huge wins in certain areas for Jane to be able to be one of the people that's actually going to be able to successfully run a campaign.
Hmm.
I just don't want to add to like that unfair criticism she got in Lincoln Journal Star, but I also don't want to tell
Wait,
people
you
like
sent me
she
that
did.
article, but I didn't get around to reading it. What was kind of like some of the key highlights from that?
Okay, so this is a fun little tangent. So, it's the same people that every time something doesn't go well for current NDP leadership, they just come out and say, "Oh, they're doing it all wrong, and they should let us come back in." It's the former leaders of the party who were more the conservative type Democrats. You got your um, Bob Kerry. You had a lot of his acolytes. Just every time something controversial goes down, they just look for an opportunity to demand that Jane resigns. And it's not because they actually have the best interest for Nebraska Democrats and Nebraska Democratic Party in mind. They just want to be able to not have to have an actual organized challenge at a state convention. They want to be able to seize on the chaos of a sudden vacancy, right?
Hmm.
If Bob Kerry, like, if he really did care a lot about Nebraska, why does he live in New York? Like, I always have to hear about this guy's opinion about Nebraska and Nebraska Democrats and them losing their way and stuff. And it's just like, Bob, you live in New York. You haven't lived here for years, except when you come back to run for Senate, like for U.S. Senate. And it's like, why do people still listen to Bob Kerry? He's the type of guy that thinks that we're going to go back to having a bunch of conservative Democrats. That's where the party's headed or something like that. And it's not. We're not going back there. So, anyways, Bob Kerry, like in his criticism, said, the reason why Tony Vargas lost was because the NDP censured Mike McDonald for
Yeah.
for like his votes on trans issues and abortion rights. And it was just like, yeah, no, that's not why he lost. Okay. And you're just here to like seize on an opportunity to yet again tell Jane that she needs to step down so your buddies can come in and take over. And they might at the next convention. I'm sure they're going to put up a candidate, but what would be easier for them is to seize on a sudden vacancy, like the chaos of a sudden vacancy.
Hmm.
Anyways, yeah, I just saw that on the short list, and I just don't think that's going anywhere. Mainly because it's very hard out here for a Nebraska Democrat. So, but yeah, I was very interested. I just saw that. But yeah, anyways, I'm not still sharing that, am I? By the way.
No.
Yeah, so to get back to it, like I really don't want to see a Rahm Emanuel. I really don't want to see a Martin O'Malley because these are the type of people like AOC just said. Like I just read it that she said that like these are the type of people, Rahm Emanuel, Martin O'Malley, are the type of people who are going to spend more time talking to the big donors, DNC donors, and that's just the truth. One of the things I really like about Ken Martin is, as his time as chair of the Minnesota Democratic Parties, he's really emphasized grassroots ground game, that sort of thing, grassroots donations, grassroots volunteering, and I just like his message.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see who comes out on top of all of this. Because I think that is definitely going to not only set up, things for the 2026 primary or midterms, but also 2028, kind of just whatever the party's messaging is. And if they can get some kind of messaging that would appeal to the masses, because, you guys saw that. I think Trump's lead is down to like 2.6 million in the popular vote.
He's getting low. Yeah, he's getting pretty low there.
Yeah, it's getting low. And like I said in that group chat earlier about like how this is not, people are saying, okay, this isn't actually a mandate anymore because, as ballots are being counted for bigger states.
Yeah.
So we'll just see how that goes, because depending on who wins that chairmanship, that also fuels how the party is going to be messaging moving forward.
Yeah.
And it could either attract more people or alienate more people from the party.
Sorry, I was reading a note here. I'm not.
Oh, no, you're good.
Like I should be. So there, I guess there's probably going to be a lot of people here asking, like, what does it matter? Like, we haven't heard anything from Jamie Harrison in the last 4 years. Well, it's because there is a difference in what DNC chair is when there's a president and when there's not a president. When there's a president, it's just a support act. It's essentially just, we try to support the president's agenda, whatever the president wants. And that's what it is. I guess when you're a DNC chair, when you have a president, one of your biggest jobs is to make sure that the factions within your party stay together behind the president, united behind the president.
Right.
But the president essentially gets to pick whoever the DNC chair is. So, I mean, Jamie Harris was he was an acolyte of Jim Clyburn. So, Jim Clyburn.
South Carolina?
South Carolina.
8th district representative.
8th district. Oh, yeah. But he's the reason why he's one of the main reasons why Joe Biden got elected, was Jim Clyburn. And then so Jamie Harrison gets the pick because he's like an acolyte of Jim Clyburn. Biden kind of owed him a favor, that sort of thing. Not that Jamie Harris doesn't have his own resume and stuff like that, but that's essentially what it was. So Jamie Harrison has just been playing, supporting act for Biden the last 4 years. But when you don't have a president, the DNC chair pretty much becomes the de facto leader of the party, like if they assert it, because you're still going to have your congressional leaders, even if they're minority leaders. Those will be also in contention for a de facto leader of the party. If you're a chair who isn't like asserting your de facto leadership of the party, then the congressional leaders will come in. So essentially the big deal is this could be who is going to be driving the direction of the Democratic Party for the next 4 years. What's the messaging going to be? What's the strategy going to be? Like, who are we trying to unite? Who are we trying to appease as the main thesis gets going, and that's not their brand? How do you get them all on board? So that's why this is important. Do you want a Rahm Emanuel, Martin O'Malley, or do you want like a Ben Winkler or Ken Martin? It's going to be like another fight like in 2017. Can I show you? Can I show you another thing? Let's see.
Yeah.
So in 2017, in the fallout after the 2016 election, you had a battle between progressive and establishment types, right? You had Tom Perez versus Keith Ellison. Keith Ellison was your progressive.
Wait, are you sharing your screen?
Am I? Yeah, thought it was.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, anyways, Tom Perez was the establishment challenger and Keith Ellison was your progressive challenger. Keith Ellison primarily had the backing of the Bernie wing of the party, for lack of a better term. And he actually did work closely with Bernie Sanders. And he did get Bernie Sanders' endorsement. And it was actually quite contentious. It came close. It came down to a final round that went 235 for Tom Perez and 200 for Keith Ellison. So I'm going to stop sharing here and just talk more about that.
Mhm.
Tom Perez was the establishment pick. He got the support of, like Obama and Clinton and other establishment figures and stuff. And that's what it came down to. And Keith Ellison, I think he was made a vice chair after the fact. But basically, we're going to get like a rematch, progressive versus establishment rematch going on. From what I understand, Ken Martin actually met with Ben Winkler, this other person who might be a progressive challenger. Nobody knows what happened in that meeting, but um, I think there's a good bet that whoever announces, because Ben Winkler could announce, I could be wrong. It could be Ken Martin is not going to run for chair, but whoever announces between the two of them is likely, they probably decided amongst themselves who would be the progressive challenger. So, yeah, I mean, we can, if you have any questions in mind, like we can get into it, but I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, I muted myself.
Okay.
um, no, yeah, I think we'll just continue to keep an eye on it and
Hmm.
see what happens. I think that's really important for you guys to know, those of you guys watching, because now that we're going to be under a Trump presidency for the next 4 years,
Hmm.
whatever the direction the Democratic Party takes is going to be really important. Like I said earlier, that message is going to be critical to either rallying up the base and gathering, more people back to the party,
Yeah.
or alienating more people. Alienate, you get what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
Alienating
Yeah.
people from the party. Because there's a lot of talk about that. As you guys had seen, post election cycle, there's been a lot of criticism on what people should have done and what people should not have done.
Hmm.
And moving further to the right has been a huge talking point. People saying we
Yeah.
have the party didn't move far enough to the right um, on the border, on economic policies, pretty much all around the board, saying that the party did
Hmm.
not move further to the right. And you have a lot of progressives fighting against that, which are being dubbed the fringe parts of the party.
I don't think they're friends. Um, yeah.
And I think I didn't even hear a lot from progressives this election cycle. I heard from a lot of like right wing media talking about progressive policies and masking that as Harris's key issues,
Hmm.
but I didn't hear a lot of progressives demanding XYZ aside from Gaza.
Let's not every progressive is one of the Gaza leftists, and I do think in the future we do need to distinguish ourselves from uh, what is a liberal, what is a progressive, and what is a leftist. But I mean, there was a distinct cohort of people that were upset over Gaza and either voted for Trump or didn't vote at all. And I wouldn't say that's the progressive wing of the party that did that. But, we can, as time goes on, we can kind of just try to talk about the subtle differences between the three categories. But yeah,
Yeah, we'll put a pin in that and come back, because I think that
no, no,
can
of
get
course, yeah, of course,
extremely like uh confusing
contentious,
to people. You like
contentious, yeah,
Well, because I feel like a lot of people are just like, they just put it all under one umbrella.
yeah,
But
yeah, it's, yeah.
so anything else that you wanted to talk about on that?
Yeah, I guess we'll see sometime this week, and maybe we'll do a follow-up episode because I'm I'm pretty confident through the chatter that Ken Martin will be announcing sometime soon. But then there's also chatter that Ben Winkler, he's the chair of the Wisconsin Democrats, might be the progressive challenger.
Mhm.
But yeah, we'll see you the next few days, and then whoever becomes the challenger, we'll maybe do more of a deep dive on them.
All right. So moving on, I wanted to talk about kind of the mass deportations, and as Trump's administration is taking shape and the people he has putting in or been nominating for different cabinet positions. I'll need to look, but I got a news alert saying that Mitch McConnell was saying that there are not going to be any recess appointments, but I guess that doesn't matter because he's no longer the Senate leader for
Mm,
Republicans. Um, so mass deportations has been kind of a hot button issue throughout this entire election cycle. It's something that Trump campaigned heavily on, and there has been a lot of uncertainties on whether or not the courts would allow it to continue. And he confirmed earlier that he was planning to use the military to carry out this mass deportation effort. And Tommy and I were talking earlier about how
Mhm.
that could be shot down by the courts.
Mhm.
But I also raised the question of like, okay, well, you can't deploy the U.S. military on U.S. soil to be used against Americans, but could you federalize the National Guard if you declare a national emergency?
Mhm.
You said no.
No, he can't. There was actually a law that was established after the Civil War, after the Union forces pulled out of the South. It was a deal that made Rutherford B. Hayes the president. Congress passed a law that said that the military could not be used to, I guess, take on domestic policing. And there, of course, there are some exceptions, but for the most part, the president could not deploy the U.S. Army to, like, let's say a sanctuary city to directly help with like immigration enforcement, that sort of thing. Um, I forget it's some stupid Latin, but yeah, I mean, there's rules against what he can do, what intelligence agencies can do. But like you said, he could federalize a National Guard unit and direct operations that way.
Yeah.
But that's also a challenge for him.
Well, I don't know because Tom Homan, who is the new border czar, which I don't like that. I don't like that title. It sounds
Czar, yeah, it's like, well, don't we hate like Russians or something like that?
the border czar. If you guys don't know what czar means, that's like a monarch in other terms, like a king, queen, kind of like falls along that title.
Yeah, specifically, it was the Russian version of Caesar. So it's what they rebranded as their Caesar. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But he did a 60 minutes interview, and I'm sure some of you guys watching have seen a lot of these clips. He talked about the way they would go about that in the 60 minutes interview. He said there's not going to be like sweeping, like, no knock warrant, like busting down doors and like raiding places. He said it's going to be a lot of like targeted, operations based on people who had already been deported. He's like, we know where these people are, most of the people. But you were saying that oftentimes U.S. citizens can get swept up into this. But
yeah,
I did want to play this clip, and then we can talk about that. Let's see. Let me go to it really quick.
People a year. We have seen one estimate that says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
That is
so yeah.
Dark.
So, his solution is families can be deported together, but there was also this other clip.
We have seen one estimate.
Sorry, that I do want to play.
At a targeted enforcement operation, grandma's in the house, she's undocumented. She get arrested too?
It depends.
I do want to say something, though, about Tom Homan. So for everyone who said Trump doesn't know what Project 2025 is, he just put a key contributor in charge of this. And Tom Homan was interviewed on 60 Minutes, and he was asked, is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families? And he said, of course there is. Families can be deported together. He also said that it didn't mean if someone was coming to be, quote unquote, rounded up, and grandma was in the house and she's undocumented, that it didn't necessarily mean that grandma wouldn't be taken to. And you can say Donald Trump has a mandate till you're blue in the face. Taking grandma is not what people were voting for. They were voting for criminals to be kicked out of this country.
Abuela is the Spanish word.
Yeah.
That's
right.
Really,
I'm not trying to
Jessica?
appropriate it.
Abuela.
Really, Jessica? That is just so offensive,
Jessica.
not knowing the name. Dana, what are your thoughts
my
on...
gosh.
I included the last bit of that because just the moving on of just like, oh, what are your thoughts on this? Like moving on. I think when people went and voted, because she was, and it's important to note that that's a Democratic strategist, the woman in pink who
Mhm.
is speaking, and she's on The Five, which is a Fox show. I think it's important to know that when people necessarily went to go vote, and to say that this is not what people were voting for, I mean, people there were rally signs that said mass deportation. He talked about, sure, like deporting criminals, right? But Tom Homan's definition of that is if you came into the country undocumented, that is a crime that you committed. So saying that people weren't voting for grandma to be deported, under Tom Homan's definition, she technically committed a crime. Do you get what I'm saying?
Sure.
Under his definition, I'm not saying like yes or no,
Yeah,
she
no, I
did or
guess
not.
I get it. I
But
get it.
from like in that 60 Minutes interview, he said if you come here undocumented, if you didn't come through the port of entry or things like that, then you technically committed a crime. Coming into the
Mhm.
US undocumented is a crime. And so when she says people were voting for criminals to be deported, they're all criminals to him.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, so I think people would be surprised to find that in the past, the U.S. has gone through these like really mad rushes to deport people, right?
Mhm.
Um, the Great Depression was a wild time, you know. People were throwing all kinds of solutions out to like try to like solve the Great Depression. Believe it or not, tariffs was like one of them that was like, oh, we just put tariffs on everything, and then every American industries will survive and thrive again. And it's like it made it worse, right? But one of the other things was let's deport all the immigrants, the undocumented immigrants, and it's like, yeah, we'll get rid of the undocumented immigrants, and they won't have to, American workers won't have to compete with them anymore and stuff like that. And it was just so sudden and just too excited, overexcited, that we literally deported American citizens, right? A lot of
Mm.
American citizens got deported, and it's just, it's just a fact. Like they got deported because they were victims of racial profiling. Hey, that guy looks like a Mexican, and that's literally what it was. We need to deport Mexican immigrants in order to help American workers. So I mean, this idea that the government uh, could
Mhm.
deport a bunch of American citizens, like people might laugh at it and call you alarmist, but it's like it's happened in the past.
Yeah.
It's happened several times in the past.
And I think there's just this overall like consensus of like, oh, that happened before in the past. We can like it can't happen again. Do you know? And
Uh,
what's that saying? Those who are not
those who
educated on
don't
history are doomed to
they don't
repeat it.
don't know the past, doomed to
Yeah.
repeat, something like that. Well, no, we accidentally deport people all the time, American citizens all the time. I mean, off the top of my head, I know that we deported a person with developmental disabilities back in 2007. Um,
Seriously?
yeah, I think I just read about it. One second. You can continue while I look.
Oh, well, breaking news. Donald Trump said he would nominate Sean Duffy, an ex-congressman and Fox business host, to lead the transportation department.
Oh,
Wow.
well, Pete Buttigieg. That's your replacement. More Fox News. When is Jesse Waters going to get a nomination?
I wouldn't be surprised if he did get one at this
Where's
point.
Sean Hannity's nomination?
Also, just to talk about undocumented immigrants a little bit further, they're ingratiated into the weave of American society at this point, right? So,
Mhm.
according to this study that I was looking at earlier, this was from a study done by the Institute of Taxation and Economic Policy. So, undocumented immigrants paid $96.7 billion in federal, state, and local taxes in 2022. So, $59.4 billion of that was paid to the federal government. It equated to around 8,800 per person in 2022. So, in other words, for every 1 million undocumented migrants who reside in the country, public services receive 8.9 billion in additional tax revenue. And again, it's also important to note that a lot of this goes to programs that they can't access, right? So, Social Security, Medicare, unemployment insurance, things like that, they're paying taxes into a system that they're not able to reap the benefits of. And so from the clip that I played a little bit ago, what did she say was going to cost $88 billion to deport every million? For every
Every year.
million, it would cost 88 billion annually. And
Yeah.
during a rally, JD Vance said that that was kind of the goal to deport 1 million people every year, which would cost 88
Mhm.
billion. And if you think
Mhm.
about it, in 2022, they paid almost 100 billion in taxes. So you found out how that was possible, that they were
Yeah.
able to.
So this is somewhat ironic, but businesses love undocumented work or labor, right? It's cheaper. They have a lot more power dynamic between the two, power asymmetry between the two. One of the reasons why the Republicans almost never deliver on their harsh border and immigration policies is because Republican-aligned businesses will come along and say, no, we want you to keep these people here, and that's why immigration has been more of a political football for most of my life, at least. But yeah, I mean, so these businesses, since they love undocumented work and they can't just pay under the table 100%, they will help these undocumented immigrants get fraudulent Social Security numbers or tax identification numbers, and they will work and pay taxes that way. And it really is a look the other way type of situation, because big Republican aligned businesses absolutely love undocumented work, and that's how they pay payroll taxes. Sales tax, well, they take the money that they earned and they go and buy goods. They're stimulating the economy and they're paying those payroll taxes or those sales taxes. Property taxes, undocumented immigrants do own houses and they do pay property taxes, or they're basically paying the property taxes as a renter. Their landlord's property taxes is via their rent. So I mean, it's just like, that's why like Dan Osborne, he got hit with that commercial that was just like, his quote was, "Just give him a damn social security number." Well, what the ad didn't go into is the context. The context was, these people pay so much in taxes, they're keeping our dying rural communities alive. You might as well just help them become citizens, was his point. So it's just like, they're not leeches on a system. They're literally paying money into a system that they can't benefit from.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why they say that it would be detrimental to like the economy, deporting all these people who pay all this into federal, state and local taxes, excuse me. And then just the cost on top of that, because you can't, I don't think people understand that, like, you can't just like take someone and then just like put them on a plane, train, or a ship and just send them back. Like, you got to coordinate with these other governments to receive these people, right? Like there's a process, and we'll talk about it on a different stream because I got to do my research and check to make sure. But they're talking about building camps and expanding holding facilities in Texas by the border for people. But we'll talk about that on a later stream once I gather more information on that. So what has this led to? This has led to a lot of people being concerned about what could happen to their families and being separated. And like Tom Homan said, families can be deported together, but a lot of people are choosing to self-deport if that happens. Let me see if I can.
Do you have stats on that?
No, I just like video clips of people who have been.
Oh, I see.
Who have been interviewed.
Like protected, while my parents.
So this is a DACA recipient.
My brothers have children that are born here. So if they were to get deported, what will happen to their kids? Although I have my life here, I think that I would take the decision to go back with my parents to take care of them.
You would?
Yes.
You own a home here. This is the city you grew up in.
But they're also part of my American dream. And I can't imagine living here without them.
Yeah, so folks, that's kind of just the state of where we are, and we're definitely going to see how things play out, and we'll be here to cover it all for you guys, and bring you some live streams and commentary and compile different footage for you guys to see. But That woman was a DACA recipient, and she mentioned that earlier in that 60 Minutes interview. And as you just heard, she doesn't want to be separated from her family. And Tom Homan was the same guy who oversaw that no tolerance policy that separated kids and families at the border. 1,000 plus, I think around nearly 2,000 of which still haven't been reunited with their parents. So these kids are kind of just out there, and there's no way to find where their parents are because they were deported. So
they're
what is your
orphans.
take on that?
Yeah, I mean, people should just like I don't want people to feel something, only feel something by what we're talking about. I want them to come away informed. So it's just like,
Sure.
I don't want you to like be alarmist. I want you to know that in the past we have accidentally deported a lot of American citizens just because we were just whipped up in this frenzy of deporting undocumented immigration. And yeah, but no, I mean, like it's really hard to think of this in an abstract terms, but when you see an individual like that telling their story, it's just like, to me, she doesn't feel like any less American, than I am. Sometimes I do wonder about like what makes me so, so good and fortunate or whatever and stuff like that. It just seems like it was a dice roll, to be honest. But I mean, telling those individual stories, that's going to be a powerful way of trying to like humanize like some of the fallout, but it breaks my heart. Absolutely breaks my heart. And I want to have faith in our institutions, and I want to hope that we can stop, seeing Americans' lives be ruined like that. But I mean, we just gotta, talk through it. I don't want to cause people. I'm saying Democrats, don't be alarmist. Just be strategically cautious right now. There is going to be time for criticism. Just let's see it play out, because I think that we've done a bad job in that we've basically desensitized the American public to Donald Trump. So, I mean, let's take a step back, let's prepare for the fights that are coming. But like a lot of the talking heads that I like to listen to are just already in panic mode. And it's just like, people are just going to tune out if you just don't. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think?
Ditto.
Yeah.
I think humanizing stories and the true effects of this, because you hear a lot of inflammatory rhetoric, and you hear a lot of inflammatory stories of Venezuelan gangs and this and that, and Haitians eating cats and dogs, and you start to think that that's what this is. But like when you start peeling back the layers, you see that these are people with families. Like that woman was saying, that the reporter was saying, she's a homeowner, right? She pays property taxes. She's a responsible citizen. She's a law-abiding, well, not citizen, but she's a law-abiding, she's a law-abiding person in the community, and her family are too, but they're facing this risk of being sent back to being deported, and she will have to give up the property she owns because they're a part of her American dream. And I think that is something that we really need to find the meaning of again. Like, what does the American dream actually mean anymore? Because she's saying, I own a home, I have all of these things, I'm ingratiated in this community, and I grew up in this city. This is all I know. But my family is a huge part of that like American dream for me. And if I can't have them here with me, then we'll build that dream together elsewhere.
Yeah. 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 And I just got to give another shout out to new media. I mean, I would just say anybody who's watching this, if the news you're watching is always just making you feel something instead of know something, instead of feel informed, like that's a good sign that maybe you need to look for a different media to consume, because it's gonna take a lot of thinking, like actual hard thinking over the next few years, and asking yourself, is this information making me feel something, or is this information making me know something? It's going to be a really, really easy way to tell, like, who should I be listening to? What should I be thinking about? But yeah, I got to run. Thanks for doing this quick show. We'll maybe do another one later in the week and see if some of this chatter pans out.
All right. Sounds good. Tommy, thank you for joining.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, have a good one.
All right, you too. All right, last thing that I kind of want to talk about is Morning Joe host Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough going down to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President-elect Trump. Let me find that clip and play it for you guys so we can kind of dissect what this all means and hear about their trip down there. I had this video queued up and everything. Where did it go? But yeah, what do you guys think about kind of the mass deportations and, what the president-elect is proposing, what he campaigned on? Um, do you guys know of anyone that might be torn apart within your community? Anybody that you work with? Anybody who's kind of concerned on what this is going to look like? Curious to see. I know living here in Nebraska, there's a huge population of migrants or potentially undocumented migrants who work in different plants here as well. Um, yeah. So I couldn't actually find the actual clip, but this is from the New York Post. So this is a clip that they shared. It's titled "Defeated Left-Wing MSNBC Anchors Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski Reveal They Met with Trump."
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications.
So I guess, gosh, it was much longer than that. But in journalism, you never want to lose access. And Mika Brzezinski, pretty much in Morning Joe, have criticized a lot of things that the former president, now president-elect, has done. But now that he's coming back in for a second term, I think a lot of people are grappling with what does that mean as far as coverage-wise. So they flew down to Mar-a-Lago to meet him. And had a conversation with him. Like they said, there were a lot of things that they discussed that they disagree with. But I think it's important to note, too, I think a lot of people are talking about how there's a lot of right-wing media, and Morning Joe by far, is not a right-wing, MSNBC is not a right-wing site. It's more of a liberal outlet. But you see a rise in right-wing media that played a huge part in this election. And, left-wing media is kind of also moving that way, as you guys see with CNN being owned by now much more of a right-wing owner. But I think it's important to note that moving forward, it's going to be detrimental to figure out how you gather your news, right? So a lot of corporate media kind of goes where they're able to get the funding, right? You have to pay the bills to keep the lights on. And where you lose access, you could also lose coverage. And so them meeting with President-elect Trump down in Mar-a-Lago is, I don't know, this says, this title says, and this is from the New York Post, which is also kind of a more right-leaning media source. Left-wing Morning Joe host and vicious Donald Trump critics reveal Monday they had a personal sit-down with the president-elect in Florida to restart communications. after conceding that voters overwhelmingly made their choice. So I guess this is more so for their audience to be able to have access and cover this next administration. But the comments speak for themselves. Yeah, what are your guys' thoughts if you guys watch Morning Joe, how this has played out? So that was just a quick live stream where we want to talk about some of the news that has been taking place and some of the clips and share with you guys what it means with the DNC moving forward and how the messaging is going to affect the 2026 midterms and 2028 presidential election, because the Democrats are not going to have a president in the White House right now. So as Tommy was saying, the DNC chair becomes kind of the de facto party leader. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will see you guys in the next one. Probably we'll do another live stream tomorrow if there's any news that breaks, some research and things that I want to share with you guys. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Jazari Qual here. Be sure to give the stream a like and follow and share if you found it informative. But thanks again for tuning in. This was kind of an impromptu thing that we did today. So yeah, talk to you guys